people that are in three stages, right? We call them seed, growth, and hyperscale. So every company has to make a decision. Either they're starting out, which is they're in the seed stage. And I always say you start with one use case, but you shape it with a very meaningful use case. We call it the use case extraction. So we have an entire framework. And after you've gone through one use case and you've gotten comfortable, right, moving through the entire framework of use case extraction, designing, developing, testing, training, analyzing, you're continuously, it's like raising a child, right? When you first give birth to this little infant, and it needs a lot of care and feeding until it can get to the growth phase, which is, toddler stage, which it needs, different kind. That's where now you're teaching it more things. You might be adding, I say, 2 more use cases and no more, because now you got to go do fixes, enhancements, and new features, after which you now need to grow up.
Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Engatica's interview series. I'm your host, Kimberly, and today we have Joti Balani, an award-winning creative technology and design architect delivering human-centered AI assistance that learns to generate emotional, ethical, and economic brand value for Fortune 100 enterprises. Welcome to the show, Joti. We're so glad to have you join us today. The Engatica interview series is the powerhouse of insights from industry experts and influencers from around the world, a platform that provides the latest news on AI, automation, and technologies that will help you grow your business. Come be a part of our community where we learn, share, and grow. Diving straight into our first question that we have for you. From your recent talk, Joti, where do you think conversational AI is headed, and how sooner organizations need to jump on this opportunity?
So, the field really started to take hold about, I would say, 4 years ago. The technology was still, coming up the curve on actually solving enterprise-grade business problems. That's really where, I came in. So I come from a background where we've, I've created enterprise-grade products in the wireless, wireline, cloud infrastructure spaces. So when I took a look at the technology, I said it's got promise, but it has some ways to go. So organizations that were adopting it early, they were experimenting, because this is a crawl, walk, run kind of process that you do need to experiment. It's very different from web and mobile interfaces. So I think organizations that haven't begun are a little bit behind, but they need to get started, because progress comes over time. As you know, machine learning models take time to adapt to the data that they're being fed, and corrections, et cetera, for the use case. So we're seeing more now beyond the Fortune 100. We've got Fortune 500 companies, we've got mid-sized companies. And I've told people, when the cloud revolution began about 10 years ago, if people are converting to the cloud now, for example, they're already behind. And this tech is taking off even faster. We're in a very 5-year window where the adoption on the large enterprise side is taking off in a big way. My fear is that the mid-sized companies are going to start getting left behind, and it's not going to be pretty. It's going to take some time to catch up.
Those are some pretty good insights that you shared with us. Talking about conversational AI, of course, chatbots is something that really comes to our mind. So do you think chatbots are really useful in terms during crisis? And how do you think can we change people's perspective for chatbots?
So the problem really is when about 4 years ago, everybody had access to this tech, because it was supposed to be anybody can create a chatbot. And that actually became the problem, because when I started researching the field to see, what the state was, there was such abysmal experiences, right? Chatbots, they were not working well. Facebook had 100,000 chatbots that were dead, abandoned, so it didn't do justice, right? It didn't do any favors to itself for convincing people, because every time you would talk to a chatbot, it wouldn't do, you just want to bypass it. So that perception is in people's minds, but those that have adopted it and given a strong enterprise-grade framework, which is what we do at Fresh River, right? So when I began, I said, this cannot be just for fun and games, right? You use some of these smart speaking assistants, but they really, it takes a lot of humans to keep them as good as they are. And they're not enterprise grade. That's one of the reasons there hasn't been adoption of some of the smart speaking technologies the way they're presented to consumers today to
Correct.
solve key business problems. They have a long way to go, but there are models that are available. I don't know if people know this, there's over 2,000 vendors in this space. That's a lot of technology for companies to go through to understand, which ones can actually deliver. The other thing I want to share is that if you think about conversational AI, there's actually a continuum of capability, all the way from, although it's not called conversational AI, if you think about robotic process automation on one end, that's at, with full respect, the dumb end of the spectrum of automation, and it has a place. On the other extreme end today, as we look at technology, we work with, some of the top leaders in the space, especially with the Fortune 100 clients, trying to solve some really hardcore business issues. We're seeing models that are spectacular. And they are transparent. So the one end of the spectrum, you've got, from an automation standpoint, RPAs. The other one, you've got conversational AI, what I truly call AI assistant. Chatbots are somewhere in the middle. And chatbots serve a very specific purpose when you need very quick transactional capability. So there's a big gap between chatbots and AI assistants. I can make that very clear to our clients as well, that, each one has a purpose, just like RPA has a purpose, chatbots have a purpose, AI assistants are at the next level. That's really what is really helping solve problems, those sophisticated models, right? Chatbots, unfortunately, because of the ubiquity of, open source models, everybody, that's why there's over 2,000 vendors, right? You grab these models and then you try to create, a good looking UI and design tools. But unfortunately, the heart of it, which I call the brains, I tell people, think of conversational AI beings in human terms, right? They have a brain, which is natural language processing, understanding, and generation. They have a heart, which is the design, a human to machine interaction. They have memory, which is content management systems, data, backend data that you have APIs to pull in. And then you have senses, which is you have chat, you have voice, you have messaging, you have SMS, even computer vision, right? For people to understand from in automotive, they have that capability, right? To do sentiment analysis. So it's really that structure and framework and the continuum. And everybody has to be careful about what use case they want. I never recommend doing chatbots in for example, a healthcare setting where you need context, where you need a lot more understanding. So it's really about which tool works best where. Sometimes it might be overkill to do, AI assistants when you have a very simple use case. In that case, chatbots do well, but they do not scale to the more sophisticated end of the spectrum of really hardcore business problems that we're seeing with some of these large clients. Does that make sense?
Yes, you completely make sense. And this is a new, fresh perspective that we're getting from AI assistants and chatbots. I really had a question here. We had one of our experts who joined us previously, and she kind of mentioned how important it is to call out a chatbot when it is a chatbot conversation and not make it human-like. In terms of how it is communicating with the user. What are your thoughts on this?
I think expectation setting is very important for a couple of reasons, right? The number one reason is that the human who is speaking to the conversational AI, I call it being, be it a chatbot or an AI assistant, their expectations are set in a certain way. So imagine a chatbot that begins sounding like it's very human. If for the purposes of the brand, actually, if the human starts asking questions it cannot answer, it will start degrading because it says, if it hasn't been trained on it, I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. And even worse is when there is no live agent to talk to. A lot of deployments of chat, I see that because I experience chatbots everywhere. And I'm like, what was the point? So you're only taking it up to a certain level. So I agree. There should be clarity that you are talking to a virtual assistant or an AI assistant or a chatbot, whatever it is, to declare yourself and be very clear about what it can do and what it cannot do. But what it cannot do, to have a pathway for the consumer right? B2B to C or B2C doesn't matter, but the human to know what to do next. At the end of the day, conversational AI interfaces are a continuum of customer experience.
Correct.
It's the next generation of interfaces, that's complementing web and mobile interfaces. But it has huge promise in what it can do. But I see a lot of people leave their designs, either abruptly end or not tell them that they're a chatbot. But you can pretty much tell. I love testing chatbots, just to see how the designer, the product team might have thought about it. And that's the unfortunate part. A lot of product teams are thinking about designing chatbot experiences, conversational experiences, like they design mobile apps. And the two are very, very different. So to your original question, yes, you should, in a very subtle, in a very human-like way, declare yourself as not being human in whatever shape or form that takes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Jyoti, for this one. How is conversational AI playing an important role in digital transformation now that post-pandemic digital transformation was actually forced to a lot of businesses? What kind of role is conversational AI playing here?
So it's not just digital transformation, right? Because that's been going on for the last several years. A lot of people have been dragging their feet, like I mentioned earlier, right? People moving to the cloud now, it's like you're playing catch up and you're late because the cloud gives you the platform upon which to build all of these other new capabilities, right?
Yeah.
So a couple of things happened through the pandemic that really pushed this tech to the forefront, out of the hype cycle into the growth phase. And that is, in the US, the Great Resignation, people are reevaluating how they work, where they work, the kind of work that they do. So what we're seeing is a gap rather in humans being able to fill the seats. I'll give you an example. One of our clients said to us for their contact center use case, they said we need to replace 30% of our agents. And, we'd be telling you 2 years or 3 years earlier now, right before the pandemic, it was to save cost. But they say now it's because we cannot find people to sit in those seats. Right? So the answer we give them is that, yeah, we absolutely can. We've done it. But, there's a myriad of things happening now, even with the recession hitting. So you have to look at the macroeconomic conditions that are fueling the need for this, because if you don't have talent sitting in seats to take customer calls, for example, HR teams have been shrinking forever. IT teams are overburdened. If you look at all the functional roles that face, large scale populations for help, you're going to need to figure out how to scale. Web and mobile will not help because that's been around for a long time. You need the way to converse. So that's really what's pushing this technology into the forefront. And, demand has been going crazy. A lot of my technology partners, are struggling to hire people, which, we're helping them out as well. And then on the enterprise side, there's a lot of misinformation also running. We're actually being brought into projects to replace some of the big 6 consultancies because they don't have bench strength or they don't have the know-how or capability for this particular field. So we're seeing some incredible changes coming. I think demand is going to continue. The question is, what kind of frameworks, because there's no standardization. There's also no regulatory framework.
Correct.
So part of what, I also talk about is the ethical, when you're reading out my introduction, the intelligence part in this space has to come from not just the economic intelligence, saving money, increasing revenue, profits, etc., but also the emotional and ethical aspects of it, right? The intelligence. So when we're creating these experiences, you have to think about all those 3 things. The other thing is, and there's no easy answer to this, is that, for example, replacing 30% of the agents, what's going to happen to those agents? They're going to go back into unemployment. I talk about the fact that we have entered what's called the exponential age, of which conversational AI and these AI capabilities are part of it, right? So we're going to see some massive changes in a very short period of time. But we're seeing, demand is not going to stop. I think that we've entered, and it's going to happen very quickly. But the question is, how well are these conversational AI experiences? There's actually Wired Magazine has a link to a database called the AI Hall of Shame, and you can see deployments. And I think there's a few conversational AI deployments there that really did harm in the way that they were deployed. So, people need to really think about how they're doing it. And this is really how we're guiding our clients, on strategy, how to think about it, because the brand can get really hurt if they do the wrong things. Because this is one of the biggest channels, even marketing teams and brand teams, that they don't realize it. They're just using it as chatbots. And so you don't realize if you don't deliver a on point experience, consumers will leave you because they have choices.
Correct.
Right? So that's why we do a lot of strategy work and delivery work, right, on both sides of the equation.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Joti. Those were some really great insights. Can you throw more light on what is contextual AI?
Yeah, so this one is, I'm going to go back to, the defining of enterprise grade experiences, right? If you think about, simple chatbots, they can be pretty two-dimensional, ask a question, answer. I always say FAQ chatbots don't solve real business problems, right? They're just a fast lookup tool. A lot of platforms that we have encountered are based on pattern matching algorithms with not true AI. And those are the ones that cannot create context. So let me give you an example. In a banking application, consumer retail banking, you and I, we want to go in, check our balance. We want to do multiple things. Say we're talking to a conversational AI interface. We want to check our balance. We might need to move money. We might, have to look up a credit card. We might say, hey, wait, I need to first check this. That's a normal way that we consumers interact, for example, for banking. Context is, can the conversational AI assistant or chatbot remember the sequence of what we were talking about, go on pause, come back, and do it in a way that feels seamless? Otherwise, we're going to get frustrated, right? People don't have enough time in the day to be patient with a chatbot. And more often than not, people go, I want to talk to an agent. Correct. That's the worst thing. So what I usually check for when we brought in, clients who tell us we've been doing this thing for a while, it's not working, can you go check? That's the first thing I go look at, is the metrics to say, how quickly did people ask for an agent? If a large percentage are asking for an agent within a short period of time, you have a failed design. You haven't thought through context, and you can read those conversation transcripts, which I find fascinating. Because you don't get that kind of insight from web and mobile, right? Because those are, happy path decision trees. In this case, anything can happen. So context is important to maintain, because that's how humans need help when they are interacting with a brand, right? Does that make sense? In the way, at least this is the way I look at it. And of course, there's more technical, capabilities behind that need to get done. It takes a lot of time and thought into it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Joti. Are there any other sound bites you'd like to leave our audience with?
I would just say, people that are in three stages, right? We call them seed, growth, and hyperscale. So every company has to make a decision. Either they're starting out, which is they're in the seed stage. And I always say you start with one use case, but you shape it with a very meaningful use case. We call it the use case extraction. So we have an entire framework. And after you've gone through one use case and you've gotten comfortable, right, moving through the entire framework of, use case extraction, designing, developing, testing, training, analyzing, you continuously, it's like raising a child, right? When you first give birth to this little infant, and it needs a lot of care and feeding until it can get to the growth phase, which is, toddler stage, which it needs, different kind. That's where now you're teaching it more things. You might be adding, I say, 2 more use cases and no more, because now you got to go do fixes, enhancements, and new features, after which you now need to grow up in, I say we're in the teen years of this technology, where you need to have, not to use an overused term, but like a center of excellence or a governance model where you can now take this kind of capability throughout the enterprise, because this has the ability to help across all functions, all industries, all verticals. So, I encourage people to think about that. That's really the work that we do. That's why a lot of companies bring us in, because they need grown-ups to help them figure out, how to really do some serious enterprise grade work. So just happy to help if, anybody needs help with that. But think through the ethical, emotional, and economic intelligence in equal parts. Oh, I will leave everybody with one more thing. I call myself a human first capitalist, because we are building the next generation consultancy in this space. But I'm also an activist, because what I believe, this tech has potential to do a lot of good, but if it's not done by responsible human beings, we're going to enter some really dark spaces. Just like any other technology, you talk about drones, you talk about hackers, people can use it for bad use cases, and they are, and you have to be vigilant. So, I'm on a mission to train people. I've been training my own team since 2020, when I realized that there was, a big demand coming. And that's one of the things we talk about. And I say we need an equal parts people from the humanities, linguistics, arts, as much as we need technologists in there. It's like the father and mother of creating these beings, because it has to be done carefully. A lot of people tell me we're not technical, AI intimidates them. And I said, do not be intimidated, because we need people with those other skill sets to come in. So we have, I'm part of Women in Voice, I'm part of Open Voice Network, I'm part of a lot of these organizations. I'm working with Latin America, I'm working with India to see, how do we train the next generation of responsible human beings, to enter this space. So just exciting times.
Yes, definitely. I would really call out to everyone watching this. If you have any questions for Jyoti, anything that she could answer for you, feel free to drop them in the comments below or reach out to us. We'll make sure we get all of them answered by Jyoti. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights. For more content, subscribe to Engati and tap the bell icon so you get access to exclusive content coming from thought leaders from around the world. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you with a new expert soon. Thank you.